Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. James here as ever, and hello anyone new visiting for the first time. Whoa, where have you been? Gosh, well, should I say, you're in for a treat today. The main question I've got to ask you is, are you an ACCA student with an upcoming ACCA exam that is pen and paper in an exam hall sat at your desk? Well, if the answer to that is yes, you are in the right place, because today I'm going to go through how to revise and how to prepare for that examination, pen and paper, the day before. What are my best techniques as an old student of ACCA, and now as a qualified member and lecturer that I can pass on to you. So if you are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe as well. There will be the button down below, and feel free to send this on to any of your friends or study buddies who are also got an exam coming up as well, to help them out. It's all 100% student led, so if you've got any questions or any other things that you'd like me to cover on the channel, feel free to put it in the comments and give the video a big thumbs up if you found it helpful, which I know you will, because it helped me and I passed, so there we go. We're going to go through 5 main tips today, break it down for you nice and easy, going through how your day should be structured so that you're going to get the most amount of learning in different ways as well, and it's going to benefit you the most so that you've got all of the tools possible that are going to help you pass as well. So, I think we should get stuck into this. Let's crack on. So, first place. This is first thing in the morning. So think about this, you're waking up first thing in the day, and that first key tip is past paper practice. That is the first thing I'd be doing first thing in the morning when I've got the most amount of energy. Now, I'm assuming as well that in the previous weeks leading up to this final day before the exam, that you've already done some past papers. So I would actually recommend that the day before, and this comes from my own experience as well, that you only maybe do 2 to 3 questions from a past paper and a time. The reason why I say not to do a full past paper, getting the whole 3 hours in you, is because I found going into exam days when I'd done a full past paper the day before, I was really a bit lethargic going into it, and I was a bit sort of tired out as well. So going into an exam the next day, a bit fatigued and a bit tired, really isn't the best way of doing it. So I tried to limit it. I'd already pre-planned which sort of 2 or 3 questions I was going to do, and these can be found on the ACCA's website under the study resources, so just pop it in on your search engine and you'll find them for free on there. The key thing here is doing it to time, going through how it's marked, looking and analysing your calculations and showing all of your workings. It's all about that process top to bottom, and be really strict on yourself when you go back and review your answer as well. Keep an eye on the time. Make sure you do them rigorously as well, hold yourself accountable. And another final tip on this, because it's first thing in the day and we're going to try and break it up in terms of different studying techniques, I'd also recommend having no music on as well. So exactly the same as if it was going to be the next day. This is hopefully going to get your mind in the right mindset going into the exam the next day, so that you're just focused on the task in hand and it is familiar to you as well. It goes without saying, turn all social media off, pop your phone in another room, because if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And also, another good technique that I found really helps, especially with my studying, was just turning off all the notifications as well, so it was not buzzing or pinging away, so that I wasn't thinking about that either. All these little changes are going to add up to a massive difference. That could be the difference between you getting a 48 or a 49, which are numbers we don't talk about on this channel, and getting onto that 50 plus. All these little things will add up, and they're going to be massive in your preparation. So that is first thing in the day, and first study tip for the day before your pen and paper ACCA exam, and that is past paper questions to time and reviewed first thing when you've got the most amount of energy, bit of a coffee, and you're going to hit the ground running for your day. So moving on, we're going through the day and coming on to point number 2, tip number 2 now. How do you review your notes? So this is where different people are going to have different strategies. I'm basing this on your sort of energy levels are going to maybe dip off as we go through the day. So this is where it's going to be really fundamental that we're getting down those things that are going to be critical as to, well, you've got to be honest with yourself and say to yourself, well, what actually don't I know, or what am I not confident on? So this is one of the tricks that I actually adopted as a student myself, and I recommend to my actual students as it is. And for anyone who's new to the channel as well, we are currently running on a zero budget here. So this is the same technique that I had as a student, and it's called my I didn't know sheet on here. So hopefully you can see this if we gaze over here, and you simply write up at the top, what didn't I know? What didn't I know? And the rule here is you put bullet points down the side, and you're only allowed to fill one sentence. The reason for this is so that it's clear and concise, it's straight to the point, and you can really digest that information nice and easy because it's just so short and sweet. That's the beauty of it. So as you're going through the day, and this may actually relate to the past paper questions you went through before, just write down, not everything, I'm only interested in things that you didn't know, because this sheet can then be used the last thing before you go to bed, read it through again, nice and easy, small bullet points, and then you can take it to the examination as well. So there you go. Zero budget, that is what I'd recommend, and I use all the time as well. The next things that are really going to help you, especially on the day of the exam, I was never one for bringing massive computations and bringing all my books, and I've been there at ACCA exams where people have got all the books piling up. For me, psychologically, that just wasn't for me at all. I'm more about, I need to have small chunks of information, easy to digest, and I know they're going to add value to me on that day. They are the fundamentals. So this is where you can actually implement flashcards. So this, again, relates into tip 2, providing yourself with flashcards that you can take on the exam day, and you might have built some of these up in your previous week's worth of revision, so bring them all together. You may have had some new points you can actually add to them as well, but the fundamental thing is clear and concise as well. There are some providers that have pocket notes as well. So what I used to do was have the pocket notes that you can buy online and actually annotate them so they're actually in my language that I understand. And I found that once I had their notes, plus if you put it in a sort of red or blue or green pen so that it stood out, they made the big difference. That can be just that little mark there, little half mark there, another mark there, and these all add up to getting you over that 50 mark. So underrated. The next thing is, as I reiterated to there, mentioned the different colours as well, so that potentially standards are in one colour or any potential other laws or theories are in another. Key terms as well, maybe you want to highlight them. Stakeholder theory is an example of this as to which examples you may use. Standards as well, these are fundamental to building on your answers so that you go into more detail, but the main one here, and a really good technique in ACCA, is picking up on what is called trigger terms. Highlight those different colours so they stand out. And I can hear you now through my headphones going, James, what on earth is a trigger term? Well, when you go through ACCA answers, they're usually massive chunks of paper, and if you go onto the channel there, I've reviewed some answers from different modules as well, so go and check them out, they're all free. And it's a case of I only underline and highlight the key terms that if I remember that key trigger term in terms of it, then if I remember the trigger term, I can then elaborate and go on and write bucket loads after it. But if I can't remember the trigger term, which is where the marks come about, then I'm in real trouble. If you learn the trigger terms, you've got good core knowledge, you've been through the core text, that is where you're really going to add value to your answers, and that is where it's going to pay dividends to pushing to get over that 50 mark as well. So that's tip number 2, later on into the day, how you review your notes and how you do it effectively and productively. They are the key critical things. Don't be one of those students that just write down bucket loads of stuff. Keep it clear and concise, easy for you to digest and to take to the exam day. That again is going to add value, just to remind yourself, being key and critical and precise on areas you didn't know, because that's where you're going to get the most added value from it. So that's tip number 2. Now coming on to tip number 3, and I'm thinking you're sort of halfway through your day now as well. Have a look on some of my other tips as well, because I also recommend that these tips you actually write down the night before as well. Hold yourself accountable, put it on a piece of paper, and then check them off as you're going through. You're far more likely to get the day that you want to have by doing this. But coming on to number 3 now, moving on through the day, And this is where you've got to incorporate some sort of interactive session with yourself. Accountancy and ACCA is very much book, pens and paper, and sat there. So what I'm saying now is actually trying to liven it up and do something a bit different. So maybe, leave your area, leave your office area, go for a little walk at this point, clear your mind, pop on that motivational playlist, whatever you're into. Oh no, well this is where I embarrass myself. Of maybe you like Miley Cyrus and she's quite motivating, or who knows, you might be into rock and roll and some Fleetwood Mac could do, but that's up to you. But I would recommend that maybe you can link this into your next day as well. So how are you getting to the exam? Are you driving? Are you going on the train? Well, okay, or even are you walking? Well, what are you going to do when you're actually travelling? You can actually record yourself. So you could go away in this interactive session, record yourself with some of your notes, so that maybe when you're in the car or on the train, pop some headphones in, actually hear yourself back as well. Just going over key areas and key points. It's another good way that if you're actually trying to teach yourself on it, if you're listening to yourself and actually saying it out loud, you are more likely to consume that knowledge and understand it better as well. So this can be actually, just trying to keep it interactive. Use it on the next day as well. And also, if you've actually got a study buddy who's studying ACCA as well and hopefully doing the same exam, give them a call, FaceTime them, see how their day's going. This is another good way of holding yourself and holding them accountable. Set it in the plan, certain time, 5-10 minutes, and see if there are any key areas or areas they're struggling on. Because if you can explain it to them, you are more likely to retain that information and you're helping them out as well. It's a win-win. If you can't actually, or you don't have a study buddy, go onto the ACCA student community. It's free on their website. Filter out which exam you're doing and see which students are actually making points on the examination, and you can interact with them on there. Free resource, highly recommended, and it's only going to add value because it's all ACCA focused to the exam that you are actually studying. And when you hang around with people who are doing the same thing in the same situation, you actually pull each other along and you become more motivated. It's only going to add value rather than sort of being sat on Instagram scrolling through whatever's going on there, and it's distracting your mind away from the task at hand, eyes on the prize, and going for that pass. Because just have a think in this interactive session of what if I failed it? What if I open that text message and email from ACCA? This could be the difference that tips me over the edge. And once you start getting into that mindset, that is fundamental, and having that drive and passion to get there is really going to help you and can be the small difference between a 49 and a 50. So that is tip 3, interactive session, middle of the day, maybe after lunch, and it's going to really benefit you with tools that you can use the following day as well. Trust me, that will work for you. Give it a try. So, coming on to number 4 now, and if you've watched a few of my other videos, you'll know of this one, but it's so underrated, and I hear so many people not mention it. But really important. If you've got pen and paper, take it down. Where are the marks? I can hear you now going, what do you mean, where are the marks? The marks are out there and I'll sort of write down bits and I'll try and get them. No, think again. Come back to me. Come back to me. Now, you've got to go to the external examiner's comments and also bring up the past exam questions, because on there you're going to have the questions, the answers, and the mark scheme. Head over to the mark scheme. That's the first fundamental thing. This is even going to be more critical if you're doing a computer-based exam and how it's going to be transferred as well. But by going through the mark scheme, you can see, and actually they've given you a bit of narrative on there where the marks are allocated, okay? And then you can break it down as to, oh, good gosh, look at this. If I don't understand these aspects here, or this computation, or this calculation, I'm missing out on half of the marks here. That is a fundamental area, and I've got to get good at that as well. This also relates into method marks are key on this, showing all workings, the own figure rule. So by looking through then and going from the actual mark scheme to the external examiner's comments, linking them up, that'll tell you where students actually made mistakes on this as well. Because at the end of the day, you just need to work out your best process, going through the actual requirement top to bottom, showing all of your workings. And the key thing with the own figure rule is if you make a small mistake at the top, then it's going to carry down all of those working marks and you're still going to pick up on them. That is fundamental, that you show all of your workings, how it's calculated, and you're doing the marker a favour, that when they look through your script, they are following the story of what you're trying to show them from the requirement. So underrated, but by having good technique involved with this, applying to the scenario as well, if you give a generic answer versus a specific answer that relates back to the scenario, that is where a specific answer, they mention it in all of the external examiners' reports. Go and have a look for the exam you're doing. It will be in there. Too many generic textbook answers that can be applied to any scenario. What they're looking for is, if you've got, say, a supermarket example, you've got to apply that scenario, apply the requirement back to the supermarket, and you are more likely to get the bigger marks on that question. Fundamental. Then it's also going to say in there, well, can you actually take that as well, and to get those final marks, to getting full marks on the requirement, are there any certain facts, standards or rates that you can apply that is going to, lift that level of your knowledge to the superior level, really showing off to the marker that you know your stuff, and that is where you're going to be pushing for full marks on that requirement. But unless you go through the mark scheme with the external examiners reports, and these are all free on the ACCA's website, if you go onto the actual student resources, it's all on there with the past papers, they will add great value to your revision plan. Trust me, I used to do it all the time, and it saves you time as well, and technique is the other key thing. So it's number 4, where are the marks? I know, very technical, isn't it? So, now I'm thinking, well, we're moving on later into the day, a bit lethargic as well. So, at this point, I'm definitely leaving my house, going out for a small little walk, bit of fresh air, maybe having a small podcast on or motivational playlist, and then coming back later on into the evening. It's the final stint, and you've got to say to yourself, well, number 5, tip 5, what do I think will come up? It's do or die, last bit of the actual day. What do I fancy? I'm going to have a punt. What am I thinking? And you've gone from sitting down doing the past papers in the morning, interactive sessions, different notes as well. So maybe try up a different environment. And I'd recommend, if you've got any music as well, pop it on now, because it's later on into the day. You might just need that extra surge as well. But say to yourself, I'm going to have a punt on what is coming up the next day. What do I fancy on my initiative from my learning as well? Or maybe there's an area which you haven't had as much time to go through. This is the time to go through it. The reason why, as well, I'd also recommend maybe just 2 questions, maybe 3 max, is you're going to be a bit lethargic and you don't want to overdo it at the end of the day, so that you're actually maybe not going to sleep very well that night. But by hopefully waking up earlier in the day, you're going to be, a big day of ACCA revision. So early to bed for me, and I'm going to wake up the same time the next day. So this can be anything from looking through external examiners' reports. Are there any specific questions? But the other thing is, if you've got a tutor, depending on which provider you're at, what did they actually say in their lectures or anything on those lines? Remember that they've been doing these modules for longer than you have. So if they've mentioned a specific area that they really fancy to come up, stick to that. Go on their knowledge and their experience, because that is what you pay for at the end of the day from it. So that'll be one of the other good things. Discuss it with classmates as well. So maybe from that interactive session earlier on, there are a couple of key areas that your study buddies are revising for. Well, okay, that's good. But if it's one odd specific question that happened on one paper 3 years ago, well, risk and reward in terms of these things. Maybe stick to your guns and say, well, if it's a tax exam you've got and there's been an income statement, income computation and tax calculation for every single year, well, I think we might have to spend a final bit of time going through that, I would say. In the same way with the audit exam, there's probably been an audit report on every single one, because these are the fundamentals. You pick what you think. The reason why I do this, and this is a tip which for me really works, is by having that mindset of, it's my decision. you will find you will work harder for it as well. So regardless of being a bit tired or being a bit lethargic, it's been a long day, by having that mindset of I'm backing myself here, you will get a lot more done and you're more motivated to put in those final couple of hours that again could be those final marks that just get you over that 50 line. So that is tip number 5, final thing for the day, and hopefully at this point you've checked off everything on your plan that you wrote the night before as well. This is because you're going to have the day that you want, not just a case of I'm going to wake up and just do some ACCA revision. So that is tip number 5. What do you think will come up? What is my punt? That is the main thing. And breathe. So that is my review. If I was in your shoes and I've got a pen and paper ACCA exam coming up tomorrow, what would I be doing the day before? I really hope that these tips, all broken down for you, will give you that platform and that structure on the day before with all these different techniques that are really going to get you over the edge and push you into that 50+ mark. I know this. I've had marginal wins in terms of exams. I've never had a 48 or 49, and I'd never want you to have that feeling either. Well, if you found today's video helpful, feel free to give it a like as well. Also, put in the comments below any other topic areas that you would like me to cover, or if you found the video helpful, pop some feedback down there. Feel free to subscribe as well so that you get all of my free resources. It's 100% student-led, so the ball is really in your court for that one. Completely up to you. I'll still be here next week as well, still going on, and I'll try my best to help everyone and yourself out there as best as I can. Well, the last thing I can say is best luck with your upcoming examinations. Let me know how you get on. I'm on Instagram as well. My details are in the bottom if you want to follow for more studying tips and updates. But as always on that bombshell, I'll see you next time. Cheers!